Hi, I'm Juliet, and this is part 2 of looking at book covers on Amazon to get book cover ideas. Last week we looked at colours. This week we're going to use the same examples and see if we can identify book cover elements in all the fantasy subgenres we looked at then. Why should you do this? In general, when people are looking for new books to read, they're looking for images they recognise to be the genre they enjoy. Colour, as we discussed last week, is a part of that, but the elements on the cover are what are really going to pique their interest. Many readers, no, I'm not saying all, like familiarity. Let's take a couple of blindingly obvious examples. The reader knows that if they see a bare-chested man on the cover, you're likely talking drop-dead gorgeous male lead, possibly a bit of a bad boy, and some kind of romance. If they see a dragon, it'll probably be fantasy. So let's analyse those covers in a bit more of a close-up. Epic fantasy. When I think of epic fantasy, I think of symbols, and I think that's borne out by the examples here. I'd estimate a good half of them have some kind of symbol on them, some more prominent than others. I would say that dramatic skies are also fairly frequent. A good number have figures on them, but they're not necessarily the most prominent thing. Some are silhouetted, others are obscured. I would have expected more prominence of swords, but perhaps that's gone out of fashion now. I'd need to check further down the list to be sure. The fonts used are generally serif, and quite blocky looking. The majority of text is white, but there's a fair bit of gold and toning colours. Myths and legends. Here is where I would expect lots of fantastical creatures and gods. There are a few dragons, but there's much more of a feel of fantastical people here. There are again a few symbols. The text here is, I think, mainly serif fonts, but there are a lot more swirls, underlining letters and flourishes. There's a lot more colour in the text here than in epic fantasy, but still a fair bit of white. Paranormal and Urban. Okay, there are a lot of series books here which may distort things, but let's see. This page is all about the symbols. There are a few with a strong female or male character against a fantasy background. I would have expected more of these. This could be because of the series distortion. The fonts again seem to be largely serif, with a couple of prominent sans serif outliers, and largely blocky and white, or what I would call a slightly tinted white, like you get with tins of paint for decorating. Of all the subgenres so far, I'd say this one is possibly the most distorted and requires the most extra research of those further down the list. Dark fantasy. Here we do see a good number of prominent figures in what I would call strong poses. There are also some weird and spooky elements. I find the Holly Black and Stephen King covers next to each other interesting. One has an actual eye, the other is a moon, but could easily be taken to be an eye. Was that deliberate? I do think this is a good ploy if you're writing in a genre with some mystery. It makes the reader stop on your cover for a moment, like I did, and that could lead to a sale. There is much more variation in fonts here, and I would say no distinct pattern. Likewise with font colour. This could be, and I don't know this for certain, because a lot of these have dark fantasy as a second genre rather than their main one. Sword and sorcery. This is where I would literally expect to see the swords shine, but once again, there's a surprising lack of them. There's a little magical light, but honestly, these seem to be a hodgepodge of everything we've already seen. Fonts are all over the place and mainly in a colour. Is it that sword and sorcery has no norms? I doubt that. Maybe, once again, this has been selected as a secondary genre. So this was a very brief look at some covers in one main genre, but what are my takeaways? First, you need to go a lot further down the lists than I did here. I would say you should look at least 200 if you can, to ensure you're getting the right elements. Second, there's a lot of crossover between sub-genres in fantasy. There will be in other categories too, in which case look for elements that cross over for your book's main categories. Third, if you think there are miscategorized books in the genre, as I suspect there are here, go a lot further down the list to find the true genre books. Fourth, if there are a lot of series books in the top echelons, go beyond those. Just because one series is popular does not mean its covers are representative of the genre. Fifth, this isn't an exact science. You can play around with elements a little, but you need to have something to tie your book to that genre. You need to have something the reader will recognise and gel with. 6. Be careful with fonts and colours. Some of these titles are really difficult to read in the thumbnails. Right, I'm off to scan more covers in my genre, so if you missed the video about book cover colours, check that out here.